Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Communities and Neighbourhoods Transitional Committee, which is being held in the Council Chamber of the Town Hall. This is a public meeting. It's being live streamed for the public to view. So can I ask that if you wish to speak, you raise your hand, and when I indicate you can speak, please ensure your microphone is switched on. When you finish speaking, please switch off your microphone. The toilets are outside on the corridor, ladies to the left, men's to the right. We aren't aware of any planned fire alarms, so if the fire alarm does sound, please leave the chamber and make your way back out of the building towards the nearest fire exit, which can be found off the stairwell to the right of the chamber. We'll now move to quick introductions of everybody in the room. I'm Councillor Peter Garbett. I'm chairing today's meeting. Councillor Richard.
Councillor Shonedmeyer Richards, whose ID card isn't working.
Councillor Abtisam Mohammed, sorry.
Councillor Andrew Sanger.
And I'm Councillor Joe Otton.
Thanks very much. Right, so let's move straight on to the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Councillor Sophie Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Paul Wood, Councillor Karen McGowan and Councillor Ben Curran.
Thank you very much. Don't think there are any items which require the exclusion of press and public. So, are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Can we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which start on page 9 of our agenda. So, does anyone have anything to say on page 9? Page 10? Page 11? Page 12? So can we take that as an accurate record of the meeting then? Thank you very much. Are there any public questions or petitions? None? Good. I'm afraid that the item number 7 on the... Sorry, did you have something to say, Councillor Richards? Not yet, okay. I'm afraid that item 7 on the agenda, we've fallen foul of illness on this. The people who were supposed to be presenting here are either ill or have family members who are ill and can't therefore make it into the meeting today. So I'm afraid we're going to have to put that one to one side. So, are there any issues referred to this committee from local... Oh, right, sorry, yes.
Right, I was going to talk about food poverty, seeing as we have it on the agenda, and I'm not sure if I have to declare an interest, but I am one of the trustees of the S2 Food Bank, and we did have a management meeting yesterday, and I was just going to say that things are looking grim and heading towards grimmer. I think I said at the last meeting we were getting 10 more clients a week, and that has continued. So we have more and more people coming, and what we're finding is we have a service level agreement with the Citizens Advice Bureau to provide debt advice and to help people to get debt orders. And now we have found that more people are coming who actually need benefits advice, not just debt advice, and that having one person 1 day a week isn't enough. We're going to have to increase it. And I understand that the S6 food bank which operates out of Philadelphia down towards, well, towards Hillsborough-ish. They've also had the same thing, that they have taken on a debt advisor, and they are now going to have to do benefits advice as well. And already we are seeing people worrying about their fuel bills, and that's before what we know is going to be a bigger hike in the autumn. It's just something I think we really do need to keep considering and being mindful of, that we're going to have some tough times ahead, and particularly now with the war in Ukraine being traditionally the breadbasket of Europe, that wheat prices and other prices will be going up. I know that sunflowers are also a big part of their export drive with sunflower oil. So all these sorts of things which we think of as wars in far off places are actually going to be things coming back to affect us very personally. And if this is going to be our last meeting before the elections, and we're talking about passing issues on to the committees that come after us, I would very much like food poverty to be and fuel poverty to be something that our successor committee takes on as an important item, because unfortunately things are only going to get worse rather than better.
Councillor Rotten.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to echo what Councillor Richards has said. I realise that we did have a working group on food poverty while we haven't been able to meet. I have done my homework as Councillor Richards mandated and spoken to a food bank serving Dawn Totley Ward that is based in Low Edges. And the story is, I've got to say, very similar to that, and in particular reference to the fuel poverty being a huge issue that is only going to get better, going to get bigger and worse. There's one other thing I did say I'd report back on, and it was the experience that was passed on to me through the food bank of being put in temporary accommodation in Low Edges and having a young child at school in High Green, and having to get the bus. And because it was a young child, the parents having to accompany the child on the bus at their own expense, and not being, and then having to wait around Hard Green all day because they couldn't afford a bus back home again. So, I don't know. The answer is, I think we should be conscious of that. They recognised it was a temporary arrangement, but surely there has to be a better way. Whether the parents can be given a bus pass as well in that situation, I don't know. But I think that's something that shouldn't be. It does seem a terribly hard position to put anybody in, and we ought to do better if we can. Thank you.
Can we ask how temporary was temporary? I mean, I know how long is a piece of string, but had they been told 3 months, 6 months?
I don't have the information, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Rotten. I know we have an admissions committee meeting on the 24th that both Councillor Richards and myself attend. So if you could pass on some of the detail, and Councillor Sanger as well, if you could pass on some of the those details to us, and we will see if we can bottom out what needs to be done on that. Thank you very much. Do we have any other updates on the food poverty item? I think I'd like to add to that the fact that food poverty is, per the full council meeting at the beginning of this month, is to be taken on as a real issue by the council. So I think we're all cognizant of the fact that we're entering a very, very difficult period for very many people, and the council is very keen to make it less difficult for as many people as possible. Okay, thanks very much. Item 8 on the agenda is issues referred from or to local area committees. It's my understanding there have been none. No? So item 9 will be looking at the schedule of forthcoming executive decisions. Now, with the idea going forward that this will be our last meeting before the elections and therefore our last meeting as a transitional committee, we may want to look at this with a view to passing on recommendations to inheritor committees. Councillor Otten.
Yeah, no, I think that's not quite the point. I think we don't need to look at this now because these will precisely be the work, the bread and butter work of the inheritor committees. So, yeah, so we don't need to look at this. This is only on the agenda to inform future work of the transitional committee, and because it's the last meeting, we don't need to do this.
Deborah?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to report back to the committee on an issue that you raised at the last meeting under this item. I probably should have brought this up under matters arising, but if it's okay, I'll do it under this agenda item. There was if I just remind members that there was a private sector leasing scheme and rough sleepers accommodation programme that was on the plan last time, and members sought clarity on that one. I spoke to the relevant officers. Unfortunately, none of them were able to attend today because of COVID, but they have sent me fortunately they have sent me a written update for you. So I will just read, it's quite a brief response, so I shall just read that out if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. That'll be good.
Any issues arising with asylum seekers should be directed to Beth Storm within Communities, who leads the work liaising with the Home Office's nominated asylum accommodation contract provider, MEAS, on its provision within the city. Any asylum seeker supported by the Home Office will be entitled to accommodation and support from MEAS. Individuals who are rough sleeping, who have no recourse to public funds, are currently supported by Housing Solutions under their Rough Sleepers Winter Plan and are currently placed in hotel accommodation. Whilst accommodated people are given support to find legal advice to help them seek their status or be clear on their future options. To date, there are 11 individuals being supported, and on average we have seen a need for approximately 8 individuals requiring this support at any one time. There is no legal requirement to offer accommodation, but it has been strongly encouraged by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities during the course of the pandemic, with some additional funding made available for this. The service has recently applied for further funding for the following 3 years, April 22 onwards, for a limited amount of support for rough sleepers who fall into this category, and expect to hear the outcome of this funding in April or May this year. The support given by the service has seen improvements on the number of individuals rough sleeping in the city, and numbers are remaining low at present, even seeing a 0 count in recent weeks. The Housing Solutions service works with all rough sleepers to find long-term solutions to their housing situation, but cannot provide or source longer-term housing to these individuals whilst they have no recourse to public funds. However, the temporary placements have been ongoing throughout the pandemic to ensure that they have been protected from the risks of the pandemic and the winter weather. The lead officer in Housing Solutions is Zoe Young.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone have anything to say? Councillor Richards.
I'm just going to tag on to that, the fact that we are aware that there are going to be refugees from Ukraine coming to this country, and I'm assuming some will come to Sheffield. My spare room is being tidied as we speak. I'm just concerned that because the government has made it a bit of a do-it-yourself arrangement rather than organising itself for people coming, that I want to make sure that there is safeguarding in place for any unaccompanied children, and also we need to look at the safety of women coming who may have been subject to abuse along the way. We are aware that rape is used as a weapon of war by some armies, and we would need to make sure that people coming were going to be in safe places and also would have access to the sort of facilities that they would need, such as either rape crisis or the expertise which we know that places like Refuge or offer to women. So I'm just slightly alarmed, I suppose, that people are saying, being asked to open up their homes, and we need to make sure that the homes that people go to are safe, as well as recognising that if you have got people, children and women who've been through trauma, that just offering a room isn't going to be enough, that there has to be support for them and also for the person offering the shelter, if you like, and not the monetary, or you'll all get £350 for doing it. There has to be the tangible support of services as well. So I don't know where we pass that through to, whether it's to a cabinet member and tell them this is what we thought, if other people agree with me. Plus, also, it needs to go onto a work programme of whichever committee is set up to do the work around refugees and asylum seekers.
Thank you very much for that. That's a really vital point to make. Councillor Rotten.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Councillor Richards. I believe Mike Gove's statement yesterday to the House Commons, he did say the safeguarding stuff would be the job of local authorities. So hopefully that message will also get through through that chain into whoever in the council is dealing with it. But I agree, we need to do it. So I'm sure it will be recognised that this will be the council's job to do it, and I hope we can do a better job than the minimum in terms of all the safeguarding things. But obviously it has to be resourced, and maybe there'll be some money attached, who knows. But yes, so I'm not concerned that we won't do it, but I agree, and I agree with what Councillor Richard said, is that we need to be aware of it and to engage with it, as not this committee obviously, but the next one.
Thank you, Councillor Rotten. I think we can make that a definite pass on to the next committee, and maybe a recommendation to the relevant cabinet member at the moment. Sorry, executive member at the moment, because it needs fairly immediate attention. I'm also aware that the support necessary is wide-ranging. It's psychological support, it's monetary support, it's language support, it's all sorts of other things as well. So we need to make sure that we are there for these people. I'm also aware that there are many refugees from other countries that don't get similar support. So I'd like to widen that out. There's certainly refugees from Yemen and from various other places that are war-torn, that I think we ought to make sure that refugees, wherever they come from, have this support. It's something I think we need as a council to make sure we're offering. Thank you very much. Indeed, as a city of sanctuary, as Councillor Richards reminds me. Right. So thank you very much for raising that, Deborah, and then Councillor Richards. So I think we then go on to item number 10, which is the last item on our agenda, which is the report from the Policy and Improvement Officer, Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to remember to turn my mic off this time when I've finished. Right, okay, so as I promised at the last meeting, what I've effectively done is pull together from my records, are kind of specific recommendations that this committee has made around certain issues, and really it's for members to raise any comments that they've got about them and consider whether there are any recommendations that need adding. So, for example, the discussion that you've just had on refugees, that would obviously be a recommendation that would be added in. And obviously request that they're forwarded to the relevant either co-op exec member if they're urgent, or the relevant committee from June onwards. What I would say is that it's a less full report than I would have hoped it to have been, simply because 2 of the working groups are still to complete. So obviously I've included the recommendations from the young people's one. I'm hoping that in Sophie's absence, she's not here this afternoon, where I'm hoping to arrange some sessions in the next week or 2 for the repairs and maintenance working group to complete. And obviously Councillor Richards and Joe can comment on what you think the next steps are likely to be with regards to the post-Christmas debt, but bearing in mind the discussion that we had on the previous item about poverty, I think that it would be fairly obvious to me that anything that came out of that working group would feed into the wider council work that the chair referred to on. I believe that the council resolution widened it from just food poverty to poverty, all kinds of poverty, when the resolution was passed at full council. So it would seem logical for that, for any recommendations out of that group to feed in to the work that will be developed around that full council resolution.
Thank you. Do we have any? Sorry, first Councillor Richards and then Councillor Sanger.
I think Joe Otten has to go next so he can say I agree with Councillor Richards. I was just going to say that one of the RSLs, housing associations in Manor Ward, but they also are in Woodhouse, Richmond area too, Great Places. They have been doing work on post-Christmas debt, or if you like, doorstep lending, and they have been working with the, and now my mind has gone, the credit union in Sheffield to get their tenants to sign up and to become part of that so that they can do safe saving, if you like, towards things that they want to buy rather than taking doorstep lending. But they've also said that with things as they are, with fuel prices and things increasing, that they are concerned that this will put more people in debt. But it is an example of a social landlord actually taking seriously the social part as well as the landlording part. And it's something I would hope that other RSLs would follow.
Thank you, Councillor Sanger.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I mean, thanks to Deborah for pulling this together. Yeah, clearly it's not been the year that we'd hoped. I think we'd hoped that we'd open up away from coronavirus and meet in person and meet closer together and have working parties and all the rest, and maybe start a bit earlier, and it just hasn't worked. And I think we all probably need to reflect on that, across the council. From May we will have, LACs will have been going for a year, and LACs clearly have met, and LAC chairs have met very regularly. The new committee system will be up and ready to go in May. We clearly had it's been a very strange transition. You know, we've had these 4 transition committees, some of whom have done very important work. I mean, in terms of, you know, the city development plan. Others have struggled more, and I think we've been one of the committees that have struggled more. So I'm hoping that lessons have been learned. I mean, to me, the key lesson was the reason the LACs have been more of a success is that we started early in June and we gave ourselves more time. And I think that will be important, because over the years, the challenge with scrutiny was when we started scrutiny back in 2000, you know, scrutiny committees were, you know, there were 6 scrutinies meeting 8 or 9 times a year, and we've ended up with, you know, until last year we had 4 scrutinies meeting 4 or 5 times a year, and you know, there was a diminution of the involvement of councillors not on the executive. The challenge next year will be to get all 84 councillors involved in the new scheme, so and the new committee system. So I think we're all looking forward to that with bated breath, and we know what hard work the governance committee have done in terms of getting us ready for that. So with that, I think we've done some bits of work here, and there's lots of things we've flagged up that the committees in their new form will have to take on, because there's lots of challenges facing both the council and the people of Sheffield. So I'm hoping that the committees know what they want to do from the early day, and will hit the ground running in June. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sanger. Does anyone else want to make any comments on this? Can I just add then about the governance committee that Councillor Richards and I have worked quite hard on. It has been a hard slog, and I think we've arrived at what will be at least a workable start. We will be reviewing that after a little while, after about 6 months, to see if there's any improvements to be made. But at the moment, yes, I'm looking forward to sitting on a committee and actually taking decisions, rather than just being a bit of cannon fodder somewhere behind the scenes. Okay.
I would say, if we're going to talk about that, we really ought to talk about Councillor Sue Alston, who you may know, who has just been a stalwart in going through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And I think we've spent most of the time either saying I agree with Sue, or occasionally I agree with Sinead, but she has absolutely been a stalwart of that committee, sorting it out.
I'll second that. You have some interesting things to say when you get home, Councillor Sanger. I think that marks the end of our agenda, does it not? So I'd like to thank everybody, both those present here today and those who've taken part but who aren't able to get here today. It's been an interesting experiment, a bit of learning taking place, both personal and organisational. So I think we've got some items to pass on. I'd have liked to have had more, but things have got in the way in various ways. So nevertheless, thanks very much indeed for your attendance here and at previous meetings, and I think that's half an hour. That's a very quick meeting. So thanks very much indeed. I declare the meeting closed.